everything that has happened to me this year has proved to be beneficial, not just for me, but for people all over this world, because I've been able to spread my message of hope and light, peace, healing, and deliverance to nations far and wide. This I now understand was never really about me, but it was about the calling that's on my life and what I was put on this earth to do. All of the evil things that happened to me in that past relationship was nothing more than a catalyst for my ascension. In the Bible, it talks about how Judas was used to take Jesus down, and Jesus went down, but going down was the only way that he was able to ascend. So, Lord has gifted me with great spiritual enlightenment and a new level of spiritual awareness that I have not had before, and I'm most thankful for that. I'm very, very thankful for that. This is a new strength and a new power that I move forth in. This book, The Object of My Affection is in My Reflection, is what my hypnotherapist and I are going to be covering in this episode and many more to come. Her name is Elaine Perliss, and she has been with me through this whole time this year as I've been dealing with the breakup that I have covered in detail on this show, in my blog, on my website, sexdrugsandjesus.com. It's all there. I encourage you all to take a look at my website and the resources that are on there. Y'all, a lot of our loved ones and people are in great danger, mentally in their heads with the associations they choose to keep. You got a lot of people falling right around us, and you all are not paying attention. You're not really aware of what's going on with the people who you claim to love and hold dear. It is a serious time in this earth right now. The hand of God is very heavy, very hot upon us. And I don't know if y'all can feel that, but it is. So I really, really encourage y'all to open your eyes, pay attention, slow down, and really become mindful of sort of life that you're living, because nothing is guaranteed to stay the same. However, everything is subject to change, and change is inevitable. You must learn to surrender to God and to the forces, to his angels and to all the holy powers that be. Fighting them is not going to get you anywhere. It's only going to get you nowhere. In this episode, Elaine and I are going to dig into this book and really, really break down the narcissism. Okay. In the chapters to come, it's going to extend beyond romantic partners and get into workplace narcissists, children that are narcissists, parents that are narcissists. This is a really big fucking problem in this world. There's different levels to it. There's different extremes and whatnot. But this sort of spirit here is something that is not to be trifled with or played with. It must be understood so that it can be handled. It must be understood so that it can be handled. Y'all, we need more knowledge. We don't need another night out on the town. We don't need another lover. We don't need another this, another that. We need more knowledge. Knowledge is power. We need to get closer to God. Spirit is power. We need power, and true strength for the times that are ahead of us and are to come. As they used to say in the church growing up, the times that have been won't be no more. The times that have been won't be no more. The Lord's been trying to warn y'all about this. Things are changing. How fast and how soon, does that really matter? The point is, will you be ready when it comes? Because when trouble comes upon you, it's like it's peace, 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 peace. And then you find yourself in trouble. Trouble is easy to get into and hard to get out of. Trouble is easy to get into and quite difficult to get out of. Trust me, I know. If you read my memoir, you understand where I'm coming from. I done been through trouble. I'm thankful for it all. For it has led me to this day, y'all. I sat here talking to you. I have no complaints. I have no complaints. I am thankful. I am thankful. All is well. I am strong and I am healthy and I am happy. This interview was recorded a little bit ago, because I've been, catching up and everything, and I'm finally back organized. I thank you for bearing with me through this long introduction. I just have a very, very serious feeling about, this subject matter in everything that Elaine and I are going to be talking about. In this episode, we're going to be discussing, posing the question, are your emotions blinding you? We're really, really talking about, can you be strong enough to leave a narcissist? Once you leave, what then? You're not alone. There's plenty of information that can help you. Elaine is a great hypnotherapist. This book does wonders. Um, Dr. Ramani's channel over on YouTube, Narc Free on YouTube. There's a lot of resources out there. For the narcissist, there's also resources out there for you too, should you decide you want to take a different track in life. It's all there. Whatever you want to reach for, reach out to, that's your decision, but you would be held accountable by whatever it is you choose to do or fail to do. Knowledge is power. I'm trying to give y'all knowledge. I'm trying to enlighten you. The greatest thing besides prayer and the Holy Ghost himself, helping to pull me up out of the abyss that I fell into at the beginning of this year, was education, knowledge, making sense out of what the hell had happened and connecting the dots and tying the shit together. Helped me to, what can I say, to not die. The old Evan is no more. That person did die, but I was able to survive. I'll just say it like that. It's very difficult for me to articulate the exact way that I'm feeling right now, but I'm thankful. I present this to you with gratitude. I have no complaints. Everything is well. So I speak help to you all who need it, and I speak a great and powerful deliverance. Don't worry about our enemies. They have no power here. Okay. The Lord has already dealt with them. Listen to this episode and please share it with somebody who you love. It helps them to overcome. Hello, my kings, queens, and everything in between out there, and welcome back to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. I'm your host, back from the grave, back from the shadow of death, beaming with a light, great, powerful white light, and I'm here with my personal hypnotherapist, Elaine Perliss, to share this with you. Elaine, how are you?
Thank you so much for inviting me to join you on your show today.
Indeed. And now Elaine is a certified clinical hypnotherapist and state board certified instructor who assists her clients in achieving success, baby. Yes. Her passion is helping to overcome roadblocks, create positive changes, and develop lifelong strategies for personal and professional well-being. Elaine is a top honors graduate of the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, the first nationally accredited college for hypnotherapy, the same one I graduated from. In addition, she holds a master practitioner certifications in neurolinguistic programming and therapeutic imagery. In other words, the bitch is bad, y'all. She knows what the fuck she's talking about. She didn't make it. She didn't Google some shit. No, she actually did the work. Her website is elaineperilous.com. So on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, all of this will go in the show notes as it always does. Today, we're going to be talking about this book here. Elaine, you want to hold yours out?
Oh, I would be happy to. Our Bibles.
This book we're holding up is called The Object of My Affection is in My Reflection, Coping with Narcissists by a powerful woman named Raquel Lerner. Now, Elaine recommended this book to me because been working with her to overcome the effects of my 5-year relationship with the covert narcissist who was in my life. You all have been following my journey. Y'all know I just released that huge ass 4-hour episode this week, kind of wrapping of the breakup update all up. Y'all know I went down to Mexico, did all this ayahuasca and LSD and all these drugs and shit to try to help to solidify the healing. And, I'm working with Ale Padilla, who works with the 7 Archangels, in order to try to break that psychic connection that still, it's pretty much gone, but still. So it's a lot to talk about. Let me see. I'm gonna start this. Tell us how I've explained how I got introduced to this book when you. And Elaine, you said it's the greatest book on narcissism that you came across in your over 20 years as a hypnotherapist. How did you find this book?
I found it when I was, I think everybody has stuff, everyone in our whole lives. If you don't have stuff, you're in denial. So when my stuff started coming up, when I first became the hypnotherapist, I was like, what is this? What's going on? And I came across this book in I was going to lectures and seminars and continuing education. And I happened to see Raquel speak and she was talking about it. And it was like all these alarm bells went off. I was like, oh, that's what it is. So, of course, I devoured her book and have been studying about it ever since because it has its tentacles in so many different areas of people's lives. And it's really fascinating how something that is seemingly so innocent is robbing people of their own emotions and their own sanity. You just don't even see it coming. It's like creeps up on you. So I was so happy to learn this. I've recommended this book to so many people. And so anyway, so I'm thrilled to have learned about it. It has helped my life. It's helped to enforce and reinforce healthy boundaries because someone who is at the negative effect of a narcissist, a narcissist doesn't want you to have any boundaries. They don't want you to have any soul. They don't want you to have any life. They don't want you to have an identity. You belong to them. And they make no bones about it and they don't take responsibility. It could go on for days. However, you lose your sense of self. You lose the ability to hold a healthy boundary. Look at the hand. This is where you stop and this is where I start. And you lose that when you're with someone who is so oppressive and it's weird because everybody likes these people. They love them until they get to know them, until they're behind closed doors with them. And so there's so much to learn, and narcissism is just one word. But when you learn about it, you start looking around at the public figures in your life and you go, oh, that's what it is. And it's pretty interesting. It's pretty fascinating. So it bleeds off into it bleeds into addiction. It bleeds into mental illness, dysfunctional families. It bleeds into so many different areas of our life, our sense of self, our self-esteem, guilt, shame. Shame is omnipresent with someone who's at the negative effects of a narcissist. And I've gone on to learn so much about these subjects that I do teach classes on them and certification courses to help people to cope with the negative effects of dealing with and coping with a narcissist. And you don't even know it until you know it. That's the weird part. I mean, when we talk about your journey, because you said you've shared it, all of a sudden it was like a light bulb went off, right? It's like, wait, what? Look, this is narcissism? Yeah, but you don't know. It sneaks up on you, you know?
Wait, you
Does that
said,
make sense?
oh, it makes perfect sense. You said you teach classes specific to this? Where can people,
Well, I don't teach one specifically on narcissism. I teach the negative effects, teaching that guilt and shame, dealing with loss because there's a lot of loss. I do a lot of grief recovery from, dealing with the negative effects of someone that, you've lost your soul. And also with anxiety, with what was it? Boundaries, healthy boundaries. And the American Hypnosis Association is AHA. It's on the hypnosis.edu website, and there are pay-per-view courses. Some of them are actually certification courses, and I've been teaching these for the better part of 20 years because people just need these tools. These are down to earth tools that will help people cope with some of the thousands of different, and you don't even realize how many ways dealing with and living with and being exposed to a narcissist it just sucks the life out of you. So anyway, so yes, so if you go to hypnosis.edu and then look at the AHA classes, you'll see, just look up Elaine Perliss and you'll see that there's lots of them under the pay-per-views.
gotcha. Okay, I'll be sure to put that in the show notes. the grief and loss is a major thing. What I came to realize was that I wasn't really mourning the loss of my ex. I was mourning the loss of the dream that I sold myself on. And and speaking of dreams, I divulged this dream for the first time when I did that 4-hour episode this week. This was a dream that I had when I was in Dubai in October of last year, a couple of weeks after my ex went out and had that affair with that guy when he was COVID positive and didn't tell him. I didn't know that this had happened at the time. But in this dream, it woke me up. I was staying at the Metropolitan Hotel in Dubai, and it was like about 2, 3 in the morning. And in this dream, my mother was caught in a car fire and she was completely engulfed in flames. And it was the most terrifying thing. And upon my research, I began to realize that this was speaking of not a threat to her, but a transformation that was coming to me. And I thought that the transformation had happened when I had the dream, but really what that was foretelling was what was going to happen once I discovered those text messages on Christmas morning about 2 months later. That's how I found out everything that my ex had been up to. And so, y'all, when Elaine says being with a narcissist changes everything, it changes everything. My identity was lost, my self-esteem, my dignity, my finances have been thrown into ruin. I was telling Elaine before we got on the show, I just had to file bankruptcy because, and I'm not whining, I'm just telling y'all just how much this can affect you and why it is so crucial to get away quickly. I had to go and do a profit and loss statement for 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 my business, and I noticed how back in December sales were going up, and in January, and then and then how they started to slump down, 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 down for the past 6 months. And then what money I did have, I had to divert it into extreme mental health things. Y'all know I was in and out of the hospital, and everything that has been going on. You have to be there to tend to businesses when you run them. If you're not there, you don't make money. And so it snowballed and got so bad that I've had to just do a clean slate. So my health was impacted, physical health, my blood pressure was up, mental health. I had to go back and stay in the mental hospital for a week. That's me away from my cats, my family, tending to my home and everything. Going down to Mexico to do the psychedelics might sound cute, but it was still costly. But I was in such torture. I was like, it can't get any worse than this. This can't hurt. But still, it was like life or death. I would rather file bankruptcy and build all over again than be dead in the grave. And so, but it literally has changed. Everything burnt up in that fire and that dream. And then I didn't realize just what an intense transformation that I was up for. We're talking not eating, walking around here, bumping into walls and shit, just being in a state of disillusionment and detached from reality, all because why? Dating somebody for half a decade who just can't come to the table and face their issues.
Oh boy, you couldn't have said that better. Oh my gosh. It it literally sucks. It's like the invasion of the body snatchers. They just suck the life out of you and you don't see it coming. You give, one of the things that I think is one of the most special things about you is that you're a helping, caring, sharing person. You have compassion, you have empathy, you think of others. Well, I'm sorry to say, but that is the thing that they're most attracted to because they want you to do it for them. You give them the benefit of the doubt. And instead of like, say somebody needs help and you give them the benefit of the doubt, most normal, excuse me, please forgive me, this is a judgment. Most normal people who don't have this is a mental challenge. They are grateful and thankful and they try to do better the next time. But with someone who has significant pathological narcissistic tendencies or even the disorder, not that many people actually have the disorder, but a lot of people have the tendencies. And once they see that you're willing to do it for them, and it's completely innocent, they're so kind, they're so nice, and you just do them a favor because you love that person, you like that person, you want to make that person happy. These are normal behaviors. For them, it's an opportunity. Oh, look, here's some fresh meat. Here's someone that I can take advantage of. I can get them to do my bidding. I can get them to, take responsibility for me because I can't take responsibility for myself. That's where the narcissist, their root, their basic, basic root is rooted in deep, deep, deep shame. And they can't look at their stuff. So they try to find other people to do it for them. And it happens so innocently and so benign. And you give someone the benefit of their doubt and you think, oh, good, everybody's happy. They're really happy. They, thank you profusely, whatever. And the next day something else is happening. And the next day something else is happening. And you think, oh, well, I love this person. I care for this person. This person's important to me. And before you know it, you're getting more and more and more. It's sort of like Chinese water torture, just a little bit at a time. And next thing you know. And, when we talk about what you went through, yours was a very, very, excuse me, difficult and extreme case because, like you were saying, you went back into the hospital again. You have had trauma in your past and you have had situations in your past that made you more special, made you more compassionate, more caring, more loving, but also more susceptible, and that's, and you don't know it. You don't realize it until it's too late, until you're in too deep. And I'm so grateful that how strong you are that you got out of it. I mean, I know you said, that's it. I'm done. I'm out. And, you were saying that you were mourning not only the person, but the life that you were building, but also your identity, how you felt about you. It was like everything was shaken, right? It was pretty amazing. And I hats off to you because I saw you earlier in the year and I see you and it's like 180 degrees. It takes a lot of courage to look at your stuff and say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, and that's what you did. And look at you now. Oh my gosh. So
I figure out.
I'm a big fan of yours.
Well, go ahead and fangirl out. I give all the credit to God, for really pulling me out. My friend Dr. Paul Winfield has this phrase that he coined, which would describe how I was at the beginning of the year, which is called diva down. Diva down. It's when
I love it. I love
the
it.
heel has broken, the earrings have come undone, the wig is sideways, the mascara is rough. Diva
Right.
down.
That's it. That's it. Getting out of bed is like a chore. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But you know what? A lot of this, you don't know it unless you're kind of looking at it, but there in a all of this are the stages of loss, the grief cycle. There's the denial, there's the bargaining, there's the guilt, there's the resentment, the sadness, the testing, the guilt some more, and that's on top of, and it's a magnified one because you feel so responsible for because you've been taught for 1, 2, 5, 25 years that it is all your fault, and so the stages of loss are magnified by that part as well. So,
Okay. And I'm going to add another stage of the grief and loss cycle that should be there, which is called Taylor Swifting, in which when you get that little bit of a clap back at them in some type of way, and you're like, see, look what you made me do. And so I'm going to read the
that's victimhood and that, excuse me, please forgive me. That's victimhood and resentment kind of mixed together. So anyways, go ahead.
there you have it. Elaine's this professional diagnosis of Taylor Swift.
Oh, well, Taylor Swift is a rock star. I mean, literally, but yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Right about so many things. And so wait a minute. So the victimhood and the what do you say, victimhood and what?
Resentment.
Is that Taylor Swift?
Resentment.
The narcissist you're talking about?
No, no. When you do a clap back and like you say, "Oh, I'm going to get you," what was it? What was her name? She talked about keying his car. She was an American Idol winner, and she talked about the next time you cheat,
Oh,
it's
Carrie
not going to be.
Underwood.
Yes, yes. That is the stages of loss. She keyed his car, she popped his tires, and she wanted to get back at him. That's the resentment. Excuse me. So, and that's her starting to take back her power, or testing, if you will, different ways of giving her power.
Right. For
And
me,
it's very pleasant.
that was going to my ex's house when I knew he was with this guy and getting high with him. And I told him that he was hurting me while he was doing it. And he chose to stay over there for another hour or two. And so since I saw he wasn't coming back home, I went and started taking back the shit I had bought for him. And so on from there. So let me read
Yes.
this introduction. It says, and y'all, there's going to be quite a bit of reading as I cover this book over the next few months. And as Mama RuPaul would say, reading is fundamental. So
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
even my
Love
English
your
is
fun.
feeling very scholarly today. So
Okay.
this book is based on the premise that good relationships are the foundation of emotional health. Professional success, loving children, and loyal friends can't make up for the loneliness and pain of a primary relationship gone wrong. When that relationship is with a narcissist, your emotional health becomes so eroded that your sanity and your dignity disappear. No matter how hard you try, there is no way to apply a tourniquet to the perpetual drama and agony of living with an individual who is as wounded as the narcissist. The pain you experience living with a narcissistic partner bleeds into every aspect of life and robs you of your equanimity and your soul. My goal is to help people whose lives are impacted by this disorder and assist those professionals who treat these men and women. Narcissism is most often defined as excessive self love and grandiosity, but in fact, narcissism is better viewed as a continuum of emotional states from adolescent self interest to romantic love to excessive self absorption and entitlement. For example, when we fall in love, we often worship or idealize our beloved and experience that idealization in return. Romantic love, which has been called temporary insanity, is a narcissistic state where we can become focused on our relationship and on ourselves to the exclusion of everything and everyone. In addition, adolescents experience a predictable stage of narcissistic development that passes with time and maturity, or so we're told. However, pathological narcissism develops from early childhood wounds that manifest in a hunger for perfect attention and admiration that can never be satisfied. For the narcissist, these childhood deficits create a distorted worldview that they are entitled to adoration simply because they exist. What do you think?
Well, I have a lot of that underlined because it is so profound. It is an incredible, incredible synopsis. You look at it, it's and it does. I mean, some of these key things, they bleed living with the pain, it bleeds into every aspect of your life, and it robs you of your soul, your power. Because when you go into a relationship with a narcissist, you do feel pretty good, and then you have like what they were talking about, that like being on drugs because you've fallen into love with this incredible person. You feel, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky. And you have blinders on. You don't see with clarity. And also they're on their best behavior. So, and there's a lot of people, probably most people in the world have some narcissistic tendencies. But what Raquel is talking about is pathological narcissism, which can be seen as a disorder. And I'm not sure if it's covered in this part, but really only 1% of the population have the diagnosable narcissistic, pathological narcissistic disorder. But that doesn't mean that there aren't millions and millions of people out there that are wounded and have these tendencies. I love how he was talking about, she was talking about it comes from early childhood wounds that manifest. They, they crave. It's like feed me, they can't get enough of admiration. perfect admiration, and that can never be satisfied. It's like a bottomless well. No matter what, they're looking for love and attention and adoration and approval from the outside because it's a giant deficit from inside. And it's never going to be filled, no matter how much you do. It's never, never enough. Never. And it's it's crazy. So it's a distorted worldview. And that's exactly right. You're here to serve me. Wait, what? And if you look in nature, that doesn't happen. But with narcissism, it does.
At one point, I asked my ex, and this is the insanity that I was dealing with. I felt such a deficit of love and attention from him. I was starved of it, which is another tactic. They starve you of attention, and yet you still feel like you want to chase them for it. And I asked him, like, what do you bring to this relationship? And he was like, well, I'm here. And and
Good
then
enough.
and then since he's a sex addict, he thought since he was willing to bottom for me, during the beginning of the relationship, like somehow that was special. That was literally the only two things he had to say, which the bottoming for me part really wasn't all that special because that's something that for him, if he was sleeping with 20, 30 different people a month, which he was, he would probably top 25 of those and then bottom for the other five. It's not like it was all that special. That was all that he could scrounge up in the moment, and that's just the way they operate. Now, speaking of relationships, though, this line from the book I thought was interesting. It says it is important to keep in mind that narcissists desperately long to be involved in a relationship, but have expectations that inevitably cause misery and disillusionment in themselves and their partner. So they want it, but because of their distorted worldview, they end up fucking it up for themselves and then blaming other people, is what I'm reading here.
That's definitely a way to look at it. They desperately want a relationship in part because they will find a partner that will do it for them. They will take responsibility for them. They will take accountability for them. They will fill that bottomless pit for them because they don't have it within themselves. So yes, they desperately want to be in a relationship. They also desperately want to be in a relationship with someone who adores them and somebody who supports them in every way, emotionally, mostly emotionally, but someone who is really there and doesn't question and doesn't doubt. And it's like almost like blind loyalty toward the person. And that's their worldview of a relationship. And when we go into a relationship, the vast majority of normal, regular relationships, there is that honeymoon stage where people are like, whatever you want, whatever you want. I'm on my best behavior, But for a narcissist, that they want to continue, that they want for people to continue that unquestioning adoring, And so when you start to realize that your needs are not getting met, and it can happen early on, it could happen midway through, it can happen when, like what you were talking about, he was sleeping with many other people during the relationship. When you start realizing that these boundaries that are for you deal breakers are being crossed, you're like, wait, what? This is not working for me. But they desperately want in a relationship, they want someone like built in that's going to serve them. And they're charming, they're exciting, they're wonderful. And they think in their mind, because they believe these things that they say, like when you were talking about your ex, what do you bring to this relationship? I'm here. Isn't that enough? I mean, that's a typical narcissistic response. I'm here. What do you want? I'm here. I'm all that. for you, you know? And it's funny because I mean, when you look back on it, I'm sure when you look back on it, it's delusional. But when you're in the middle of it, when you're when you're emotionally connected with someone, you overlook some of the things that are glaring, like headlight glaring, but you overlook it because there's this emotion, this love. Like you said, there was hope for this relationship and what you imagined it might be. Well, he didn't share that, but he didn't let you know that he didn't share it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Which brings me to my next point. Another line from the book reads y'all that their wounds prevent them from experiencing human intimacy because their primary attachment. I really want y'all to listen to this. Their primary attachment is not to you. It's not to a person, but to the procurement of adoration and attention. I'm going to say this shit again.
please, it's very important.
Their primary attachment, attachment, is not to you, boo. It's not to a person, but to the procurement of adoration and attention. I asked my ex towards the end of our relationship when he claimed to really want to keep it and work through us. I asked him after 5 years, what do I mean to you? He started spouting off all the things I have done for him. He could not say, you are a wonderful person. You're beautiful. I love you. His only response was, you take me here, you buy me this. And then when I immediately was like, well, damn, that's it. He did that thing narcissists do where they look, I think it's to the left when they're trying to be deceiving, because there's a certain way you can read eye movements. And what they're doing is they're pausing to come up with a lie. My ex would always say, oh, he would try to act like he's bad at talking or bad at this, and he just was a fumbler of words. No, what he was doing was pausing to try to come up with the lie and the manipulation in the moment. He tried to walk that back, but he couldn't. After 5 years, nothing good to say about me personally. He only viewed me as a means to an end. He never really liked me. When he would go out and cheat and sleep with these people, he actually would say he knew he wasn't happy. He would actually say the people don't mean anything to him. And so he knows that he's just going out in the world to suck people dry. And this does not faze him. So
Mhm.
people don't like you. They like what you can do for them. And I need y'all to understand that.
Very important. To them, you are a human doing, not a human being. And they can't love you because they don't love themselves. There's a hole in there that is so wide. It's like the Grand Canyon. You are so right. I mean, why can't somebody say, somebody in a healthy, and anybody who's out there that is having a challenging relationship, ask them the question that you just asked your ex. What do you see in me? What is it that you find so special? And if it's a lot of tangible stuff, you're probably in a situation where someone is using on a level, using you on a lot of levels. You know, I'm enough because I'm being. That's what you're looking for. But oh my gosh, you said it so eloquently and backing it up with your own personal experience. That's exactly right.
I'm going to take it further. I saw my ex's uh, self-hate, and I thought that I could work with him on this. He said he wanted to work with it. I would watch him in the mirror, examine himself, and come up with how ugly he thought he was. And, his insecurities were real. Now, he was slender, about my height, like 5'8", 170, 175. I thought he was fine as fuck. And then, but in his mind, he did not feel like he measured up. A lot of males tend to measure themselves to other men. I think masculinity just really hurts itself sometimes. So I said, okay, let me see what I can do to improve this situation, not to fix him, but to offer him some love and encouragement. So, his hair, I had started going, taking him to a barber to actually to do something with his hair because he's Trinidadian and he can grow a fucking lot of hair. And, so we started getting it tended to. I had them put like, they put like dreadlocks in his hair and, I dyed them and everything for him. I started buying him clothes. I upgraded the wardrobe because he was so depressed and so sad that he would just be out in wrinkled ass, old faded, dark grays and dark, khakis and shit. I brightened up the wardrobe. I took him out to places, out to eat, to museums, to all these trips all over the country and things like that. And I'm going to tell you, he disliked himself just as much after 5 years of all of this work and effort and time and money, energy I put into him as he did at the damn beginning. I did all of these things, but it was never internalized. It's just like it was just like water off a duck's back. It happened and then whatever. Because he was still talking about being mad. He's almost 30 years old at this point. I think he'll be 27 this year. In our relationship, he was still mad about something some girl said to him in middle school. He it does not matter what you try to do to somebody who's that bent on being bitter. It just will not change anything. And no, they can't be emotionally available because they cannot move forward when they're so hell bent on holding on to pain so they can play the victim.
Mm. Oh my gosh, you are so right. So when you say masculinity in the term that way that you were using it, it's ego. It's their ego is talking. It's not their essence, it's their ego. How do I look to and like you were saying before, the adoration, they desperately need that adoration from the outside because there's a deficit from the inside. And one of their strategies is looking for rescuers. They look for people that are going to say, "Oh, honey, let me take you under my wing and I'm going to make you all better," because narcissists are master manipulators. And they have a lot of good qualities, but they are master manipulators. They are deceitful. They lie. They will use any strategy possible to get you to do their bidding. And when you do their bidding, it keeps them from taking responsibility for their own actions. And that's where the shame comes in. If they do something wrong in the world of shame, they are wrong. Doing and being are, they're not valid enough. And so they look for you. Now, here's the weird twist. On some level, they know that they're using the people that they love. They do know this. And there's so much, like you said, self-hatred. The more you do for them, the more resentful they get. Because not you personally, but what happens is when you're doing for a narcissist, they are grateful and they're happy, but you're also telling them that they can't do it themselves. And so you're feeding that self-hatred, that self-pity, that deficit that I can't do it. I can't provide it. And so somebody will feed it and fill it and try, but I don't know anyone who has been able to fill a deficit of another person from that other person's life. You just can't, so no matter what you do, it's never going to be enough.
The
So
the
yeah,
way
right on.
Right, thank you. So are
Mm.
you preaching this morning. So the way this came out, what Elaine is talking about in our relationship, we went to couples counseling twice. Don't go to couples counseling with a narcissist. It's not going to work. There is counseling available to them, but they have to go down that path by themselves for themselves. You cannot hold their hand. You cannot go with them. But after all that I did for Ethan, by the end of the relationship, he had twisted this around in couples counseling to saying he doesn't have a voice in the relationship. He twisted it around to saying, I did too much. I was planning all the trips. Now suddenly he's complaining about saying, well, he used to plan trips for his friends. Now suddenly he called me controlling. Everything that Elaine just said, all the good that I sent to him, he twisted it around as though I was trying to steal his identity, step on his dick, and just take his manhood away when that was never the intention. I asked him, do you want to plan anything? Do you want to do this? The counselor would ask him, do you have any complaints? Anything you'd like to say? He would sit there and shake his head and say everything's good. When secretly he had twisted it around and it was not good. So,
Right. Wow, that's a great example. Yeah, because here you are trying to help, and here he is resentful, not that you were helping, but because you inadvertently were telling him that he's not enough and that he couldn't do enough. Or him realizing, and I should say, and him realizing I'm using this person, and deep down inside that wow, wow. And then turning it and twisting it. By the way, as it relates to therapy with a narcissist, it is one of the hardest mental health issues to deal with. And if you happen to be in a relationship with someone who you think of as being narcissistic, or you're finding that you're being manipulated to, lied to, whatever it is, figure out what you will stand for and what you won't stand for. And that's it, because you can't control them. No matter what you want to do, you can't control them. You can't make them better. So I will take this. I won't take this. Like for you, you knew what your deal breaker was, and he crossed that. And he crossed that threshold, and you said, enough. That's it. I'm out. And that's the part you have to hold that boundary, and you have to be willing to walk away. I mean, when you're talking about someone who's an addict and you do an intervention, it's kind of similar. I'm no longer interested in enabling your behavior. This is what I need. And if you can't do it, I'm out, you know? And it's you holding on to your sanity, and it takes a lot to get there. So you figure out what you will stand for, figure out what you won't stand for. And when they cross that line, you let them know, not with anger, not with hatred, not with any judgment, just this is what I will stand for. This is what I want. Narcissist will not, underline, not go to therapy on their own typically, because if they admit that they've made a mistake, that automatically catastrophizes into I am a mistake. There is no differentiation for them. So they're not going to go to therapy unless you stress it and says, I mean, I've worked with people who's, early in my career when I thought I could do something about it, I would work with someone who was a narcissist because their partner said, you better go to therapy or else. It was it was a complete abject failure. And so, you cut your losses and you say, you know what? You got to do this work. So, anyways, you hit it right on the head. Do not, under any circumstances, try to fix a narcissist. Just hold a boundary.
Talk about a
Anyways.
dumpster fire. I had a dream the other night. Now that I'm healed, the spirit has begun to show me the problems going on in my ex's life. I'll text him and I'll be like, okay, I had this dream. You're out there fucking up because the spirit has shown me. I recommend you do this, that, but my recommendation to him was I interpreted the dream to an extent because I already trained him how to go online and do this himself. And I told him, I'm here for you as far as God will let me be here for you. And your mother is always there for you and she doesn't judge you, but you have got to tell us what it is you need. And I left it at that. Because in my dreams now, when he shows up, he's kind of like, the Lord shows him to me, like I told you before, like as a mosquito or a spider. I saw him as like a crocodile, alligator. The other morning in my dream, and it's like he was asking for help, but he was saying it so low that nobody could hear him. The cry for help was sincere, but he was so weak that no one could hear him. And I told him this dream as well, and I said, you're gonna have to talk louder and tell us what you need because we're not going to come and get you. It's like we used to. That's not going to happen. But you are not abandoned. But you have got to tell us what you have decided is going to work because we tried it the other way.
And did work. Well, they have to want help at least as much as you do. His mom, she wants him to thrive and survive, but she can't want it more than him. She
Right.
can't, because it's imbalanced. The world is balanced, and when it's out of balance, it doesn't work. And I love how you did that. I can't hear you when you're crying for help. You need to speak up. You need to speak your needs, and then I'll be there for you. But I'm not going to come in and pull you out of the gutter and try to, patch you up. We tried that. That didn't work.
Right.
So that's good. That was a good interpretation of that dream, And at some point, like anybody, they won't fix it. They won't get help until and unless the pain that they're in, that the hell that they're in is more devastating than the fear of change. And he's not there yet.
Oh yeah, my ex is definitely a creature of habit. He's like a 70-year-old trapped in a 27-year-old's body. But
Yeah,
and he's a lone wolf by choice, and he's done all of this to himself. But in this dream, he was like being abused by, men and things like that. Which is, when you're a sex addict, you allow yourself to be abused by men. When you go into these hookup apps, there's so much ghosting and gaslighting and rejection and games that people play. You're totally allowing yourself to be abused by people and worsening your mental health condition when you're playing the field like that and going out there.
exactly.
Orgasm and sexual pleasure and all of that ain't worth the long lasting mental health, possible suicide risk, and all of this from that constant exposure to hurtful things. And so now,
And addiction is very prevalent, by the way, with narcissism. And so you talk about a sex addiction, that's an escape from the extreme, like you said, self-hatred that they have. It's trying to put a Band-Aid on a broken arm, you know?
Sure.
It's not going to work, you know? It's just not.
Girl, no, it will not work. But y'all better be warned about that because in the book about that, in the book in the book of Proverbs, it speaks about how you can go out there and have all of this sex and stuff, and then you're gonna end up mourning when your body is consumed with sickness and disease, or like the Bible says, the Lord can take in turn something that was sweet and tasteful to you and joy into gravel into your mouth. You don't want to have joy today that's gonna cause you pain tomorrow. You want to have a continual feast that goes from glory to glory, from one good thing to another. And that's what you want. You don't want to let the devil trick you with this temporary pleasure that you have to just turn around and get again. And because that's not healing and that is also not deliverance. I wanted to talk
Babe,
I wanted to talk about how you had mentioned how Raquel was mentioning how narcissists they have unrealistic expectations that deal with things well. Be careful about that, y'all, because look, things that upset most people, you have to be upset in life. You have to have highs and lows. They do not respond to things the same. When my ex would wash clothes for me at my house, like one day he had this like little mini outburst as he decided that he was folding more clothes and doing more work than I was. And I maintained my calm and I was like, well, whenever you don't want to do no more, just stop. There's no need for a whole argument, because they don't know how to process like a toddler, their medulla oblongata and, prefrontal, lobe and cortex and all that shit ain't developed right. And so therefore they do like Donald Trump does, and when he doesn't get some shit his way, he flails, you know, he's a total fucking and that is how they are. They don't react like most people, like forgive me, like Elaine said, like normal people do to problems. We don't just say, "You hurt my feelings, I'm gonna go cheat and give someone COVID." You don't say, "You hurt my feelings, so I'm gonna go fuck a porn star and pay them." You you say, "You hurt my feelings, so let's sit down at the goddamn table and talk about it." Not
it's right. Right. What feelings for birds, right? Exactly. And oh my God, you're so right. Yeah, it's so true. Oh, wow. And you're right. There are a lot of people out there that are walking around, they're total malignant narcissists, and they think that their what doesn't stink. And it's just not true. And they believe the lies that they say to themselves because to do anything else will, it's sort of like, it's like Jenga. You take that one block out and they all fall down, or that house of cards. It's literally very, very tenuous. and it doesn't take a lot to topple it. So yeah, you're right. You definitely went to the school of dealing with narcissists, and you came out with flying colors.
Right? Thank you so much. And you have guided me through that school. Raquel says that this doesn't make them it doesn't make them bad. It makes them tragic and emotionally unavailable in relationships. So when I had gone and taken everything back from my ex gaming PC, the Xbox, all the clothes, I gave away the furniture for free on Facebook, marketplace that I had bought for him. That had an impact on him, which he may never articulate to me. He was like, "Fuck, I feel like a bad person." I told him, "You're not a bad person. You just do bad things." But as I begin to really set the emotions, I'm like, "This motherfucker is evil." And I begin to think of like Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars, Darth Sidious, how he not only after Sith master trained him, he cut him down. He Then he went and deceived the Jedi for all those years and pretended to be this feeble old man when really he was secretly plotting and he wore a mask just like narcissists do until Mace Windu burned it away when he redirected his own negativity to him in the form of force lightning. I s Darth Sidious was a narcissist. I look at somebody, say, like Dexter from Showtime, the hot ass serial killer, and I feel like Dexter has more compassion and the more because he had like a code. He's like, I'm only gonna murder people who murder other people. Narcissists are more like indiscriminate. I don't view Dexter as evil, even though he would drive a knife in the heart of a bitch in a New York minute if he viewed them as a threat to society. So help me understand. Help me understand how my ex and Donald Trump, are not inherently evil.
Okay, that's an excellent question. Remember, he spent a half a decade getting you to take responsibility and playing the victim. He spent 5 whole years doing that. And so it's hard not to think of him as the evil villain. And he has done a lot of mean things. And I mean, you've used the Donald Trump analogy, and it really is. You know, when's the last time he said, I'm sorry? When's the last time he apologized for something that he did? When's the last time he was accountable? When's the last time? When's the first time? You know, and it's pretty clear, look at the vindictiveness that happens when he doesn't get his way, you know? And so, I apologize for those people out there that are Trump fans because there are some, you know, he's got a great way of persuading people to do what he wants, to do his bidding. And he's really a Teflon person in a lot of ways. However, he doesn't take responsibility and he doesn't allow people, it's just not balanced, and you look in nature, it's not balanced. And so what happens is the people around a narcissist, I'm going to pull this into the general realm, the people around a narcissist constantly feel like they are wrong. It's never enough. I'm just going to bring myself into the room for 1 minute. I was raised by a narcissist. And when I was 17 years old, I left home saying, I am not 100% wrong. I just can't be. And I had to get out of the situation, detach myself from the situation. And I realized that a lot of the stuff that was being told to me, it's like detoxing from a toxic situation. And that's exactly what it is. You don't realize it's out of balance until you detach from it. You just don't. You just know that you're miserable and you're doubting yourself. Okay. So I'm really grateful and honored to spend this time with you today. And I hope that we'll have an opportunity to pick this up again in your next broadcast. Okay.
Oh, we absolutely shall because, it's not just partners in the Raquel's book. She talks about coworkers, children, narcissistic parents, like Elaine was just saying. It's the whole gamut. And so
Oh, yeah.
we will be hearing more from Elaine on this. I wanted to bring y'all this book because it is super critical There may be only 1% officially diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, but I personally disagree with that number because there's at least about 9 people who I've gone back and recounted in my personal life. I say 30 to 40% of these bitches running around here are high level narcissists, 1%. But
Well, but we do congregate together. Anyways, oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I am so honored to be with you today.
absolutely, it's Elaine Perliss. Her contact information will go in the show notes. And my website is sexdrugsandjesus.com. And please share this with somebody. And if this is you suffering, please get healed. If you are the narcissist, know that you do have a way out if you want it. Thank you all so much for listening today. Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. Feel free to reach out to me directly at Devanin at sexdrugsandjesus.com and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devanin, and it's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.